Yep, she's
here.
Okay, great.
And you're all set to go whenever you're ready.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to call the special meeting of the Salem Board of Education meeting to order. It's, I'm sorry, 4:32. Okay, thank you. And entertain a motion to recommend to approve the participation in high-risk sports for varsity boys and girls basketball for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I did have a couple of questions about the plan. Is this something that we should talk about the plan after the motion, or?
Your call.
Oh, okay. It's just one of the things that I was wondering about when you were looking at the basketball plan is you identified that different people had to be board approved in order to be in the area. And when you talked about statisticians, I was wondering if that meant the scorekeepers, the clock operators, the shot clock operators. Well, that was something that the board was going to have to identify people, or is that something that the plan approves?
Julie, you want me to answer that, or? So, I mean, from my angle on that, I'll let Julie speak to the plan. The board already appoints some of those people. I don't, on a regular basis, like we do clock timekeepers, and they're always board appointed people who are there.
I don't think if we've done that.
I'm not sure if we have the shot clock folks in those people either.
I mean, we vote in the past on what they make, but I don't think we've actually approved individuals. Right, I think that's the only time it's ever come up to the board is if we pay them, if we changed what we pay them per game or whatnot.
The only people that I recall running the clocks are usually it was Shane and Justin, or some combination, or a coach. It always seems to be a school employee that's running them. On a technicality, they're appointed, but we haven't ever appointed specifically to these are the people.
Oh, right. It just that it said that in the plan. So
right.
Yeah.
My thought is, so I was just reviewing that. Sorry, I didn't have my mute button and I was not on the screen, but I'm wondering if, so I just was rereading it, and it says basically that that you can only be appointed by the board. I mean, we could, this is our plan, but I'd have to go back and just grab the Washington County sheet. I have to pull that up. I don't know if you have that in front of you, Dave, but you know, do we have to approve a person, or could we approve that someone assigned to be the clock operator would be permitted? Do we have to name the person, do you think? Maybe we just put in there that the board approves, you know, no more than 2 people to run the clock and or those types of duties. What do you think, Dave? Do we need to have the name of a person, or just assign that as a duty? I think that would suffice.
I would think that, you know, because that needs to change from time to time. It's not always the same person. Is that, you know, the board would limit, you know, say that, you know, one book person, one shot clock person, and that be it. Because sometimes, like I said, sometimes Shane had done it, sometimes it was Justin had done it, sometimes it was you know, a coach or an assistant coach who would help do that. Either way, you know, we've got this break that if the board wanted to appoint someone specifically, then you know, we have a meeting here in a week and a half, you know, so we can easily get it done.
And it's not my point that I don't feel that we need to, we haven't in the past, but it's just that there's going to be a question of limiting the number of people that are going to be in watching the playing. You know, somebody might be looking to fill those positions. So I don't know whether just having a statement that saying game officials and essential game personnel would be included in the count for, to talk about coaches and for, I'm just, because you mentioned board approval. So I'm just questioning what it is that you need from us as far as making sure that, because I don't want anything to catch it up if, there's something that we need to take care of.
It's my understanding, reading the plan, is that it is the intent from the county plan to limit the number of people in the gym. So the idea is that only those essential personnel. So I think that would suffice. I think it would just be maybe identified by the plan administrator, which basically the county wants the plan administrators, which are Dave, Don, and/or myself, to be the ones who are monitoring all that. And obviously one of us would be at those games. So I know that Don had mentioned that they've really scaled back on what they will need, but obviously if we're the home team, we'll need to have a clock operator and/or probably at least one person for the book. So I think knowing that as administrators, we would want to limit that to as few people as possible. I think probably 2, or we could say no more than 3, but I feel like we always just provided 2. But I guess what I'll try to do is, I know that Don was out of town, but I could try to text him while we're meeting and see if he thinks that's enough. But I think that for some reason, I want to say, I don't know if the other team is not bringing somebody.
So if there's 4 essential individuals, one of them being the coach, right? Or coaches. If we have experienced people doing the scoring and the clock, they can also do the shot clock. But if we ever, so I did it a couple times. I got drafted to do it. Unfortunately, I was not great at it. But I didn't have to do the shot clock also. So if we have ever a time where it's not, I think, Justin or Shane, then there would have to be 2 people to do the clocks, I believe.
And, I'm sure that will all work out. It's just that since the plan specifically identified additional people to be approved, I wanted to make sure that if in looking at this, if this was part of the plan, if there was something else that we needed to do. I mean, I understand that those people need to be there and they're essential to the game. You can't play the game without them. So I just wanted to make sure that the plan, reflected. I think I know what they intended, but I just wanted to make sure that we.
What page is that on, Ann, about board approval? I remember reading it, but
It's under
That is-
facilities.
under facilities?
Facility management. So I think I didn't number the pages. I apologize. That's the second
Yep, on the
page.
Second page, yep. No.
And the 4th bullet underneath facility management. And I'm comfortable with, however you want to have it worked out. We do have, as Dr. Glover pointed out, do have another meeting if that's something that you think, but then you always have to have a backup. So it becomes, I
Yeah.
game.
The first home. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if we can make a blanket statement that those essential people need to be included in that count, I'm sure that,
The first home game is actually Monday, March 1st. So it looks like we would have time just to kind of firm that up, what the number is. And then we could put that through on Wednesday.
okay.
Yep, the first game's for boys is Monday, the March 1st, and girls is Tuesday, March 2nd. Actually, yeah. Yep.
Julie, will there be some way that games are streamed so that people can watch them? I know a lot of schools are streaming games live on a link somewhere so that people can see that aren't allowed to be in the gym.
We discussed that, but it's a matter of, we've got to see if we could get Wi-Fi in the gym. So Dave and I had discussed that in the past, but we were busy putting this together. We haven't finished that.
Okay. Just curious.
So the gym's not a hotspot, huh?
Yeah, it's on the list of things to do, but just hasn't been completed yet.
So maybe I'm.
Well,
maybe
we'll
I'm
work on
confused.
that. We're gonna try our best.
Maybe I'm confused, but it looks to me that fourth point under facility management is just talking about small boys managers, statisticians who are not going to be allowed, right? So that is, right, ones that are not usually appointed by the board are not allowed. And because the only other place where I see this come up is under contests, which would be on page 3. And that's talking about travel, right? That's would be away games, I assume, when it talks about travel. So up to 4 individuals identified as essential personnel. So I don't quickly see anything about.
The first bullet point, Bob, only the student athletes, appointed personnel and school administration athletic director will be allowed at practices and games. I think that was,
Okay. Oh, so it's first bullet point. Sorry. Yep. No,
Yep.
So obviously so then it has to be more than that, right? Because that doesn't address the person doing the book and the time.
I'm wondering, let me talk to Don and find out how many people we'll need, because if the home team, the away team isn't providing a person, we might need an extra person. So maybe we could just appoint positions, and that would be determined by a plan administrator or something like that. I don't know. That's your end.
Well, the 4 people traveling, is that a Washington County number, or is that a Salem number?
That's a Washington County number.
Right,
Generally, that's just if you maybe had a trainer or, they're trying to exclude team, managers that are students and things like that. Really, it would just be the team and the 2 coaches.
Right, so they could bring their own scorer if they desired to, right?
I'm not sure. That's something I have to ask. I think there was a league, maybe a discussion in the league about that, and that's what I have to clarify with Don about. I'm going to look that up while we're still talking here and see with the league. I'm sorry, I didn't, for some reason, don't have that paper here.
So is this approved? Is this a plan we approve, or just a plan that's here for information?
Plans for your information, the county requires board approval for participation in the sports. And then the plan has been put together administratively for kind of all those overall operations.
And there's no testing requirements involved with basketball. I think with wrestling there is.
But yeah, the school physician did not say anything to the requirement of testing for basketball at this time.
Okay.
There any other questions?
So I did just look up, so for Adirondack League has what they've agreed upon. Teams will be allowed to bring rostered players and 4 essential staff to contests, coaches, scores, keepers, etc. So we will bring those, and home team will supply 2 additional essential staff to run clocks. So I think the board would just need to approve essential staff to run clocks.
Okay.
We have to approve that?
Well, according to Washington County's plan, the only board approved personnel, administrators, and the athletic director, in addition to the team.
So you'll have that for us then at next week's meeting.
Yeah.
Jackie put a question into the chat.
Thanks, Heidi. She was just wondering if there's limitations with contact at practices, only running plays.
No, all of the details are in the plan. So it's really just based on sanitizing equipment and the hygiene, no, fist bumping, high fives. They sanitize their hands coming on and off the court when they have a break in practice. Coaches should be socially distanced unless they're demonstrating a skill or play. So no, it's in the wrestling plan, there is a much more detailed contact type of and social distancing protocol, but no, it's very similar to what the games would be. So they can practice similar to the games.
Does anybody else have any further questions?
I have a question about scheduling of who is handling scheduling for our teams.
So the schedules just came out from the league. Don sent those forward, but unfortunately, I was the only person who could open them on my phone. So I just printed them out and I have to scan them in on my scanner, send them over. So the scheduling has been done. I think that was done in the league. And would obviously Don would, the athletic director would be the point of contact. Do you have a specific question about the schedule? We have it for basketball. We don't have anything for wrestling yet.
Well, I guess my question is, I know we just had issues in the past with whether coaches are doing it or athletic director doing it. And,
Oh, scheduling for the practices, do you mean, or the games?
I mean, for the games. And so my question is, will there be any games outside of those league games, or are those the only games that will be permitted to happen?
To me, it appears by looking at these schedules, it's just they just came over this afternoon, the Adirondack League. And so it looks like the teams are Whitehall, Argyle, Fort Edward, Salem, and Hartford, it appears, for boys. And it looks similar for girls.
And
Also-
all the specifics, I don't really matter. But
Right, so it appears just to be within the league. And because it's such a tight time frame, so the games are basically Tuesday, March 2nd through Friday, March 12th. So I think they just scheduled them to, get them within that time frame so that we were kind of clearing, I think, the fall 2 conflict situation as much as possible. So that, and the game times are already established, 5:30 for weekdays and 11 o'clock for Saturdays. The coaches are working on the practice schedule. They're coordinating together.
So I guess my question still is just, are those the only games that'll happen? There's no responsibility on anybody, coach or AD, to schedule any other games, right? In a typical year, there would be,
Right.
But those are all the games that are going to happen.
That's my understanding at this time. It's my understanding there has not been a discussion because again, we're supposed to be just playing within our region and our county and our league. So.
Okay, I knew there was the intention of the county. I didn't know about the league.
Yeah.
So, okay. In fact, the Post article had talked about teams playing in their county outside of their league. May not be relevant for us, but I wasn't sure if that was.
I don't have that understanding, but I will double check on that.
Okay.
And there was just one other comment in the chat to Heidi's point about recording the games, that even if there isn't Wi-Fi, if there's a way that they could be recorded and posted later, just a thought.
Yep, that's part of my phone calls out to our techie folks at BOCES. When we did it at graduation, it was an expense. It was like $3,000 to make it happen. To that quality level that you would want it to be for graduation. So that's on the list because, we want folks to be able to watch the kids be able to play so they can't come and spectate themselves. A lot of folks are using Facebook Live as an example to put games through. So we'll see what we can do. Well, it's in the works.
No, I think even if it's not the greatest of quality, at least parents would have a choice, would have a chance to kind of look at it. I think that's all they're asking. If not, we'll figure it out.
For the purple dots.
At least you're trying. They can hear the commentary.
Is there any other comments or questions from the board? All right. At this point, then, all those in favor of approving participation in the high-risk sports of varsity boys and girls basketball, please signify by saying aye.
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 So Jackie we don't see her face, was she allowed because with the change in the regulations being able to hold our meetings remotely, are we able to record Jackie's vote?
I haven't seen anything. I think she still needs to be visible.
Okay,
When it comes to voting there, I don't believe that's been waived by the executive order. I think that it's just the notification pieces. There have been some changes too.
Okay, so I was trying to watch, but I didn't see everybody. Heidi, I'm sorry, did
Yes.
Dan?
Yes. in
Bob?
favor.
Yes.
Aye for me. So motion carries 4-0. And I'm sorry, Jackie. But all right. And then the next item for discussion is entertain a motion to approve the participation in the high-risk sport for varsity wrestling for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Heidi?
Second.
Second by Dan. Any questions or concerns about the wrestling or?
Just a quick question on the testing piece. So so I'm reading that 2 days before the match, they'll be tested both the rapid test and with PCR, need negative test results on both of those, or what is the? I guess I'm not.
The what I received back from the doctors was a touch different from that. So we may be updating that piece to it. The last conversation I had with the doctor is a once a week test would be sufficient there. And it was the antigen test was, I believe, was going to be acceptable based on that last conversation. That was it. Because
Yes, you're referring to the rapid test?
yeah, as the rapid. I'm moving away from the rapid test because they have rapid PCR tests in the area now at Cambridge Pediatrics. So it's she had suggested testing on Mondays. That's there. That way, it's a once a week type of test piece. I can re-seek clarification on that, but that was my understanding that it didn't need to be a PCR, that it just had to be the other. And I'll just double check to be sure. Testing is test for anything that's going to involve, the wrestling or outside of conditioning is going to require testing per our school physician.
So as long, so if it's just one test, that's fine. I mean, obviously, if there was a rapid test and a PCR done and the rapid test was positive and the PCR was negative, scientifically, you would just go with PCR negative, right? So they wouldn't both have to be, you'd run those in parallel in that series. So,
I think
but if we just do the rapid, that's fine. I was just curious whether, I didn't want, because you would be more likely to get a false positive with the rapid test than with the PCR.
Yeah, well, the other piece there too is if we have to do the rapid followed by the PCR one, the PCR can take up to 5 days, and that would delay any wrestling for a week, So you'd end up having not enough time to wrestle if we had to do a PCR test every week, which is another reason why I want to just recheck that we were talking about that, that 15-minute test for the antigen rather than the 5-day one.
I was also curious about the quarantine from time of test until match. What type of quarantine we were talking about there?
Yeah, and that conversation, the model that is currently in that plan, model that is currently in that plan is the college model that is there, and that's where she had originally had started. My most recent email has backed off that a little bit, so I will go back and reshore that back up, because we can't quarantine kids out of school to wrestle, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was originally done. Spoke with her, I believe on Wednesday or Thursday, and that was what she was saying would be what she would be most comfortable with. So that's what we had put in the original draft plan. But then we did, when we had made the proposal, we did not include that in there, and she made the recommendation to you, correct, Dr. Glover, for the once per week. So.
I mean, I think it is. So there's different types of quarantine as well, right? So if you look at, I don't know if it's still this way, but at least up until a month or so ago, Washington County would say if you had a close contact or a proximal or proximate contact, it was a different type of quarantine, right? So it was a full quarantine if you had a close contact, and if you had a proximal or proximate contact, you could still work, but then you couldn't. You had to quarantine outside of work. So it seems like potentially you could ask something of student athletes, say, okay, like you can't, there's other, you know, you can either be in school or something to do with your sport, or you can be in school, but otherwise you have to quarantine. I don't know if that was the intent, but clearly keeping them home and not having to come to school, I assumed wasn't the intent. But so anyway, just looking for clarification on that.
Yeah, we just took, I think our intent, just with Dr. Glover's email conversation that we were just going to take it out and put testing 1 time per week, correct, Dr. Glover?
Yeah, we were going to adjust, but we wanted to make sure in the plan that it was clear that testing was going to be a requirement.
Well, I think some sort of modified quarantine for any of those athletes, I think it wouldn't seem that unreasonable to me. I mean, they're going to be pretty busy at school and with their sport, so that wouldn't seem unreasonable to me to say, okay, don't be running off doing something else as a type of training rule.
Any other questions or concerns? All right, in that case, all those who wish to approve the participation in the high-risk sport of varsity wrestling, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0.
I will just let the board know there are some other semantics we are going to be working through here with the approval. We are a merged team that's here with Cambridge, of course. Cambridge's board has approved participation, but their doctor had not for participation. So there's that piece to work through, and we own kind of in air quotes this program. So how does that piece work? The other piece is the original plan, if all sports were going to run as normal, is that we were going to use Cambridge as our place to wrestle because the construction project. So that's where our practices and everything we're going to attend. So I'll be speaking with Mr. Silvernail, Dr. Silvernail tomorrow on some of those logistics, and Frank and I and Don and Julie will have to talk to here at some point and kind of working through some semantics. So just know there's more planning now to be had now that we have to go ahead to wrestle this year.
So that would be, Dr. Glover, those were the only two items that we needed to address?
So far, tomorrow's a different day.
All right. Well, then a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned at 5:00 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.